Hey friends, Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel. First of all, I want to thank each one of you, the thousands of you that tune in 3 times a week to listen to me talk about missing people. It is impossible for our team to find all of the missing cases that are out there. It's impossible. Many of these cases don't make the national scene. A lot of them are held up at local levels. Mainstream media doesn't want to pick them up. And for whatever reason, we don't see them. In the last 6 months, you have sent me many cases. And I would say 60 or 70% are cases that we've already done and you just haven't seen them, haven't read about them. Or there's also the 30% that slip through the cracks that we've never heard about. And today we're going to do one of those that you sent me that we haven't heard. And I'm just like you. There's nothing different about me. Every once in a while, a case comes around, maybe once a month, once every other month, it'll just shake me to my soul. This is one of those. And a lot of the things that happened to this young man that we're going to talk about reminded me of me. Bothered me. Several times when I was working on this, I had to stop and walk away and clear my mind because I was getting upset. The path I'm going to take you down that this family walked is the same one that many families walk. It's horrific. Sometimes law enforcement agencies don't have the compassion, the understanding, and they don't know how to engage with victims' families. And I feel like they have the same pain that I do and you do of watching these people go through this, but they want to distance themselves from that pain. And in that effort to distance, they may seem like they don't care. There were a couple of things done in this case that we're going to talk about that I get upset about. And maybe we can all learn from it. This incident involves a young man by the name of Randy Leach, 17 years old. He went missing April 15th, 1988, tax day. Now some of you are going to say, oh, that happened a long time ago. Hold your taters. There's still a group online right now that is actively working these cases. This case. And they're not giving up, and I admire that greatly. So stay with this. Even if you think it's an old case and it doesn't have relevance, it does. Randy lived in a very small city called Linwood, Kansas. And he was a senior at Linwood High School. He was the only child of Harold and Alberta Leach. Randy was a good student. From everything I could tell, somewhere between a 3.5 and 3.8 average. He played basketball and ran track. He was 6'3", 220. He was a big young man. And he was restoring a 66 Ford Mustang that his dad had gotten him as a graduation gift. He was ecstatic, going to have his own car. This is the first point. Drove me crazy. When I was young, I drove some really crappy cars. But my folks realized I was a good kid, and I was. I didn't get in trouble. I worked hard. And my dad helped me find a 66 Mustang and restore it. True story. Well, April 15th, Randy was invited to attend a party in the city, given by some friends, pre-graduation party. Party was about 4 miles west of Linwood. The Leaches lived about 2 miles west of Linwood, so he didn't travel too far to get to this party. 6:30 that night, April 15th, Randy left his home driving his mom's 1985 Dodge 4-door 600, a gray-colored car. This thing is a beast. It's a big car, heavy. You're not going to miss it. I gotta say, I'm sure Randy wasn't all ecstatic about driving that car, but he had wheels that night, and that's all that mattered. Let that picture stick in your mind forever. Randy Leach. So he's driving his mom's car. At 6:45, he stops at the Stouts convenience store, and he buys a soda and some snacks and gets some gas. His family said he had about $50 on him in cash. Drives away from the convenience store, and he drove southeast to DeSoto, Kansas, where he was restoring the Mustang. And he stopped in there and worked on that car for a couple hours. Now this is Kansas City right here. This is DeSoto. This is Linwood. And Randy lived just a couple miles outside of town to the west. How do I know? Because I looked it up. And then this is the Kansas River. Now to get to the car, he had to cross a bridge over the over the Kansas River to DeSoto. He stayed there till about 9:15, got back in his mom's car, drove back over the river, through Linwood, then drove past his house and went a couple miles further to where this party was located. Now remember, Randy was no little guy. 6'3", 220. He is a big young man. And this is an important point that I don't hear discussed too much. But it's in my mind. When I was a senior in high school, I was 6'1", I probably weighed 145 pounds. I was pretty thin. But 6'3", 220, it's a big target. He arrives at the party at 9:30. There's about 45 to 60 people there. Some of the people there said that there was some selling of alcohol going on. During the subsequent interviews, people said that Randy was well liked by everybody at the school. Nobody knew if he ever had an enemy. Several people said that there was something really special about him. Randy's mom, Alberta, had a standing curfew of 12:30 a.m. And Randy made it almost every night. Folks described him as a good kid. He was an only child. So Harold and Alberta, all of their love went on that son. So he's at the party. It's 12:30 a.m. And people see him at the party looking for his keys. Somehow he lost them. Next morning, April 16th, 6 a.m. Alberta wakes up, realizes Randy never got home. Wakes up Harold. They're thinking he must have gotten in an accident. They call the sheriff. The sheriff comes out. Says, no, there was no accidents last night. No, his car wasn't involved. They tell him where this party was located, which would have been probably the last place that saw him. So the sheriff goes out and checks on that house, takes a report of a missing person, Now, the mindset of the sheriff at this point, the deputy that responded, the kid's probably staying over at someone's house. They're not taking it seriously. I'm just telling you the way it is. This happens every day in America, somewhere, probably 50 times. And the kids are found within an hour or two. So the deputy goes over to the house that had the party. House is all cleaned up, almost like a party hadn't happened there. Interview the residents. The residents said, yeah, I saw Randy at about 12:30. And then when they were closing up the party at 2 o'clock, they noticed he was gone, the car was gone, and remember this, nobody had seen him leave. What does that remind you of? It reminds me exactly of a missing 411 sobering coincidence. Nobody ever sees these young athletes leave. Ever. So, deputy comes back to the house, reports to Harold and Alberta, and they start to plan a course of action. It's very difficult to find a human compared to finding a big car. So if I was the deputy, if there were any air support anywhere, maybe I'd try to get Kansas City helicopter to fly out there and do a flyover of the city, see if they can find the car. Fly the river, fly around the bridges, see if the car went off the bridge. This would be my mindset. Because everything anyone said about Randy, good kid, was never in trouble, cared about a new car he was getting, had good grades, didn't get in trouble, didn't do drugs. Now, people at the party said that they saw him staggering around. Troublesome. Did he get drunk? Was he doing drugs? They said he never did in the past. Did somebody spike a drink? What happened? More questions. The next day, April 17th, searches were made for Randy's car. And the sheriff's detectives started to interview attendees at the party. And what they stated in a public interview is that Randy was very well liked. They couldn't find any enemies that he had. And at that time, they said that they couldn't find any indication of foul play. There was very little crime in the community of 370 people that he lived in. And they couldn't understand what happened, where he might be. All makes sense to me at this point. Searches went on for a while. Article stated that Harold and Alberta started to get frustrated with the sheriff. Well, in June 88, Harold and Alberta hired a private investigator. In all my research, I never found anything stating what this private investigator found. Now, I can tell you a little bit about private investigators because I'm a licensed private investigator. A lot of people don't know that. I've been licensed for almost 30 years. And you are loyal to the person paying the bills. And you have no right to go out and tell the press what you find without the permission of the person who's contracting you. Now, if they hired a private investigator from Kansas City, they may not know the inner workings of a sheriff's office out in Linwood. So it's hard to say how effective he was, or she was, and how many people they investigated or spoke to. Now, a year later, April 17th, 1989, there's an article in the paper, and it says, "Disappearance baffles detectives." One of the sheriff's office detectives decided to take this case to the National Crime Conference in Tennessee. And they agreed it would be one of the 300 cases they would review while that conference was going on. And what they do here is there's a presentation made on the incident. Detectives from other departments throw out ideas, talk about possible issues. This is the part that starts to get me a little pissed. I'm sorry I'm using that word. A detective for the sheriff's office named Sparks is the person who takes us out there. He came back and he told the family that he wanted to have an inquisition and forced testimony under oath from some of the people at the party. Because under oath, meaning you're swearing under oath that you're telling the truth. If you're lying, it's perjury and it's a crime. And he hoped that that would prompt some of the people to come forward and tell the truth about what happened. Remember, some of the attendees said that they saw Randy staggering about. One of the people at the party said that they saw that. They left to take one of the drunk people home and were coming back for Randy. When they came back, he was gone. Now, if you're presenting in front of 100, 200 detectives from across the U.S., facts associated with the case, and giving them a little insight, why wouldn't you tell and allow the parents to read the report about what happened? When it's a missing person case, that means it's not criminal. Now, were the sheriffs just blowing smoke and the entire time they thought it was criminal? I have no idea. But the family had asked if they could read the reports. And something I tell everybody, is to get a copy of the report if you're family or you're a close friend. Why is that? To make sure that the facts are correct. Make sure they're not looking over there when it happened over here. Make sure that everything in the background is true and they haven't fabricated something. Yeah. It gets me very, very mad when sheriff's offices refuse to give up reports to people. And I've read thousands of these reports. I understand why some sheriff's offices don't want to give up their reports. They're horrific. It's like that much information, 4 lines, and that's it. Or it's so poorly written, I could get an average 4th grader to write it better. I understand all that. And I'm not making judgments about people. But still, transparency takes a lot of pressure off of deputies in the sheriff's office. And I don't think law enforcement understands that. If there's nothing there, there's nothing there. But this sheriff's office put up a big fit about allowing the parents to read any of these reports. And in fact, they tried to litigate it going up the line, and the Kansas Supreme Court upheld it and said that they're never going to read those reports. That's crap. Got me really mad. Well, May 5th, 1990, another year later, another article. The sheriff's office said that they had now interviewed 150 people related to the case, and that the parents, specifically, Harold had asked the Kansas Attorney General to look into the case. He had asked for the Kansas State Police to look into it because he wasn't happy with what the sheriff was doing. One example is Harold stated that the local sheriff had not done a search warrant on the house where the party was located. I understand that. Maybe you don't need to do a search warrant. Maybe you go to the house, explain to the family, hey, we have a missing persons case, can we search your house for some evidence? If they say no, well, then maybe you do get a search warrant. If they say yes, well, then you go in and do it. I'd say probably 8 times out of 10 they're going to say yes, unless they're hiding something. And what are you looking for? What if there's a spot on a rug that's 4 foot by 6 foot and it's nothing but blood? Well, then there was a crime there, right? And you start taking a different look at the case. What if there's holes in the wall that weren't there before? All these things start to add up. Well, they never did a search warrant of the house. And then, weirdly, there's a big fire at the house that had the party. Remember, you and I have talked about this before at other incidents of missing people. How weird is that? The SO now stated that they would not be doing an inquisition. They were put in front of the undersheriff at the time. That's the number 2 deputy in the county. They call him the undersheriff. Sheriff is number 1, undersheriff is number 2. A lot of times when the sheriff doesn't want to put his face in front of the camera, he'll tell the undersheriff to go do it. Well, in this case, the undersheriff met with Detective Sparks, a few other detectives, and the parents. And he said, yeah, we made a decision. We're not going to do an inquisition. I read that and I didn't understand that. If you can force testimony, why not? You've got a case now that's over 2 years old. You have almost nothing. Why aren't you going to do this? Maybe you're going to develop some leads. Again, I haven't read the reports. I don't know. But at this point, it's almost as though someone's trying to hide something somewhere. No, you can't read the reports. And no, we're not going to do an inquisition. Inquisition will be testimony in public under oath. Well, days later, some police reports turn up in Harold and Alberta's mailbox. Turn up out of nowhere. Somebody just dropped them there. This was an article in the paper that said that. It never said what those reports stated, though. A few days later, the Attorney General turns down the family's request for state assistance. Undersheriff of the county at the time, Wayne Turner, holds a press conference. He's asked, what happened to Randy Leach? He stated, well, we think he's probably dead, maybe a suicide. What? What? I went back through, I read this. I went back through 20 different lengthy articles that I read. I found 0 evidence indicative of a suicide. None. For Undersheriff Turner to say this, knowing the family's going to hear it, was truly unbelievable. I would have been so upset. If I was Harold and Alberta, I'm not sure what I would have done. To even imply that Randy was suicidal is nuts. Again, knowing only what I know in the newspaper. Did he try to commit suicide before? Was he suicidal? Was he bipolar? Did he have mental health issues? Nothing ever said that. He was an athlete, got great grades, was a good kid. What are they talking about? When officials say something like that, it's an attempt to clean their shoulders and wash their hands of the case and say, you know what, they did it, it's not on me. Except you idiot who said that. Where is the car? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, where's the car? Somebody's going to go commit suicide. Where are you going to hide that big hunk of car? That car isn't going to be hidden easily at all. Randy is deserving better at this point, and I'm getting mad as I'm reading this. I'm infuriated by it. So, weird twist to the case. Local city. A witness comes forward It says that they were drugged and taken to these caves in Linwood, in a rural part of Linwood. They have these caves. And he says it was late at night. 4 or 5 people were in satanic robes. And they had a little fire going, and some type of satanic ritual was happening, he said. He said in part of the cave was this body hanging from like a PE rope with its face smashed in by what appeared to be maybe a hammer. They were dead. He said he was under the influence of drugs at the time, but he could remember everything that happened. He explained where he saw it. Detectives knew where they were. He took them back out there. And the sheriff said that they searched these caves for 2 days. They found nothing. No blood, no evidence, no rope evidence, no nothing. Then the Kansas State Police gave that witness a polygraph, and he passed. So what do you do with that? Well, this witness said that this happened at about the time that Randy Leach disappeared. Okay. Well, they searched the area of the caves and they searched the fields around the caves. They found nothing. The sheriff later stated that there's no evidence of any satanic ritual anywhere out there. That's interesting. You have somebody over here that passed a polygraph saying it. I don't know what to make of that. How could you so easily wash your hands of it? Were there some witness statements from the party about satanic rituals and the sheriff doesn't want the public to know that? I don't know. Remember what I said about transparency? Alleviates a lot of the pressure off the sheriff if you just let the family read, unless there's something in there the sheriff wants to hide. There are some true American patriots out there that have not given up the search for Randy, including his parents. In the years after Randy disappeared, they searched ponds, rivers, lakes, streams for the car. Remember what I told you at the beginning? The key to the case is to find the car. Where is the car? It's somewhere. Well, if you remember our Missing 411 movie, where we highlighted the Ralstons, that's that couple, an elderly couple that travels around in their boat with side scan sonar and finds bodies. Turns out the Leaches used the Ralstons in Kansas to look for Randy. I thought that's phenomenal. Ralstons didn't find anything, but they were at least using the right people. Also, cadaver dogs have been used in many of the locations trying to find a scent. On multiple dates they used cadaver dogs, nothing was found. From the first day Randy went missing, Alberta and Harold were looking for their only son. Nonstop. Some of the theories that have been floated around. One was suicide by the undersheriff. Idiotic. Another one that he ran away. I think that's another idiotic theory. Randy, born and raised as a farm boy, that part of Kansas. I don't see him running away. Sorry. Didn't have enough money to run away. And he wouldn't run away from that 66 Ford Mustang. He was murdered. I don't know. Possible? I still think if he was driving that drunk, it always made sense to me that maybe he drove that car off a bridge into a river, stream, pond, lake. But I read all of the lakes, rivers, and streams that they side scanned and looked for that car. I think they covered it. Now remember at the beginning I told you that there's a group that's still pushing this case. First of all, Randy's dad, Harold, he died in 2021. God rest his soul. Never knowing where his son is. Alberta, 81 years old, still living in the same house that Randy was. Now there's a Facebook and a website dedicated to this. It's called In Search of Randy with a Y.com. In Search of Randy.com is a standard website. Just put that in Google and look. And then there's a Facebook site of the same name. I looked at those pictures on Facebook. You look. Nobody deserves this fate. I don't care. Nobody does. If you're somebody in Linwood, somebody that knows something about this case, time to come forward. Time to tell the truth. Friends and family need to know the truth. Randy needs to be found. If you want to send me an email about this, missing411@yahoo.com. You want to keep yourself confidential? I'll guarantee it. I'm a published author. I've had all kinds of people tell me things. I've never given up a source. But family needs to know. Harold, if you're listening, you deserve better, my man. You deserve better. Rest in peace, Randy and Harold. Paulides out.